All righty, Jake and I are ready.
Go ahead.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Good Deeds Note Investing Podcast Open Mic Night. I am here with my co-host, Jake Greenberg, a small, fluffy white dog, and that other person, I forget his name. We are here with our friends, not as many as usual because we had kind of a failure to get an email out about the evening change, but we'll try to do some great content for you nonetheless, everyone who's watching this on replay. So please join us in the future. If you generally watch these on replay, this is, someone is just commenting. This is, in fact, the dog that I summited Everest with. And it was really quite a special moment. That I came home and told my significant other about, my husband, the other guy in my life. Yes, we have kind of a mixed bag tonight. We wanted to give everyone who's on a chance to kind of guide the conversation a little bit. And we also have kind of an exciting offer for all of you. I hope you find it exciting anyway. I'm excited to bring it to you.
Oh, that's right. I completely forgot about that.
Yes. Oh my God, that's the whole reason I'm here.
So I'll let you announce it later. So
okay.
Because I'll screw it up. But one of the things I wanted to just jump into is we had Ron, who's on, basically, said, hey, let's talk about non-responsive borrowers. And the first thing that popped in my mind is our good friend TK. I won't give this person's name.
Good Lord, yes.
So I think we should just talk about the story of TK and that we're going through right now, and kind of give people kind of a rundown of, because this is really a typical scenario that you will get. So why don't we kind of roll back the time, and I'll start with it, and then I'll let you, because you were taking care of it for a little while, and we'll go from there. But so this is a contract for deed that I JV'd with Gail on. I think I was a funding partner, right? I don't know. That we bought, and the borrower was probably 6-12 months behind, and this was probably in December. Initial borrower outreach, we got in touch with the borrower fairly quickly and reached an agreement where he would pay roughly, call it $150 bi-weekly. So till he got caught up, because I think the payment may have been like $250. So it was an extra $50. But, over time, we were really trying to gauge the borrower to see if they could, continue making the payments. He had made payments through January, February, March, and then basically disappeared. And what I mean by disappeared is the payments stopped coming in the door, and reach out had essentially gone quiet. So basically from there, Gail, I will kind of turn it over to you for the last few months, and then I can take it back for some of the conversations that I had with the borrower today.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I should just say too, we bought at that time a pool of 6 contracts for deed, and we were actually very surprised that this gentleman was actually occupying one of them, because they were all vacant other than that. And, we were used to kind of trying to hunt people down, and he was actually very easy to find, very cordial on the phone. We've had many friendly conversations, very forward-looking. We immediately, at his behest, put him on a trial mod with these bi-weekly payments, doing everything we could to accommodate his special needs. So his last payment was in March, and then, just ghosting. Like a bad relationship. He broke up with us, Chris. Mm-hmm. And, we tried to reach him. The servicer tried to reach him. We finally resorted to sending the demand letter. And actually, I think we not only sent the demand letter, we went the extra, we didn't hear back on the demand letter. So then the next step was to have the writ posted, like whatever, I don't really know the terminology of this particular state.
Yeah, writ of summons, I think.
I generally avoid it a lot, but apparently somebody put something right on his door. And that got his attention. And so he called. And we had just very recently, right before the demand letter, we had both tried to reach him. We all had his phone number, calling, texting, where are you? And because we, our focus shifted from let's, get him back on track to let's offer him cash for keys, as opposed to going through the whole legal process. And we didn't hear from him until yesterday, basically. He saw the writ. That really woke him up. He called up and told us he'd been in the hospital and his phone was broken and the dog ate his homework. I don't know. It was a lot of things. And we did make a cash for keys offer. I mean, we were kind of feeling pretty strongly going into this conversation that, everyone gets a second chance, but, it takes some extraordinary circumstance for us to feel excited about giving someone a third chance after they've bombed on the second try. So, I do feel like we don't know whether he was actually in the hospital, whether that was an excuse, but, we always do try to be, kind and understanding, but you just really never know, like whether this guy just he took a vacation from having payments. So anyway, we made him a cash for keys offer and, gave him time to think about it. So today he texted me and said he really wants to keep the house. And, whereas yesterday he told us maybe he has about $5,000 altogether at this point.
Is what he owes.
I'm sorry, yeah.
5,000 is what
his reinstatement, yeah. So he made us an offer yesterday of like $1,500, and then let me just go back to making payments again, and we're just kind of like, So today he upped his offer to $3,000, and so we're, kind of like, okay, show us the money. Let's make sure before we kind of slow everything down here. So after discussing it and what we would want to see from him, proof of funds or commitment from whoever's going to loan him the money or whatever, we decide that Chris should call him back and have a real man-to-man conversation about what's going to happen next. So what happened, Chris?
Yeah. So I'll just step back and use the engineer in me just to, engineer the timeline of this. Just to step back for a second. So it was March when he stopped paying. In mid-June, we sent the demand letter because it was more than 30 days past due. And then it was basically July 10th. And basically it was like, okay, the demand expires and the writ is like a 10-day notice, basically saying like, hey, you got 10 more days to respond or we're basically going to file this in court. And is how I understand it. So that's what got him to kind of jump finally. But today he sent me a text that made absolutely no sense. So I just picked up the phone and called him. And, the offer went from, $1,500. He believes he can come up with $3,000 down and then start paying I think it was $175 biweekly with a direct deposit. Some of the things that I had asked for from him, and this things I'll mention to people out there is, I asked the guy. I said, okay, where's the $3,000 coming from? Because if you're borrowing it, really does no good because you owe somebody else some money now. I need confirmation that you have a job. I need the kind of confirmation that what your paycheck is, to see how much you're making. Because if you're only making, $200 every 2 weeks and you're trying to say you're going to give me $175, that's not going to work. And
he's kind of been in and out of jobs too. Like I think he's a truck driver, and it's I don't know what the issues are where he is, but work is not consistent for him.
So, basically, he said that $3,000 check should be here any day and so forth. And, my comment back to him was, I need to, review this with our executive committee again. Yes. And I said, until you physically have the 3,000, I'm like, it really doesn't exist. So when you have it, let's talk. And I said, I'm not making any promises that they'll accept it or, this will be accepted. But, once that happens, I can then at least, have further conversations on what to do. And in the chat, I see, if we give them another stance, would you have to start the whole process over? And that's the challenge. So so if you're getting somebody, and this is what you always have to be careful with your servicer, when you send a demand letter out and, they make a payment that's not a full payment, in most states, you gotta be careful, because if you accept that payment, that means that you basically would have to start this whole process over.
Okay, but what is accepting it? If the servicer takes it but then sends it back to him, have you accepted it?
No.
Okay, so even if the servicer makes a mistake and credits their account, they can take it out and send it back?
Yep, because I just had that happen where the person, because, with my servicer, Madison, you can call in and pay by phone. And they called in, paid by phone. There was only accept full reinstatement on there, but the phone system doesn't know that. So they get the payment. What they do is they just send the payment check back to them. So that's something just be careful of. So if he gives us $1,000 or $2,000, we have to restart the clock. Now, all we've really done is send a demand letter, which is, $100 or $200 demand letter, not a big deal. But when you start dealing with forfeitures and you start paying $1,000 to file the civil case, that's where you got to be very careful. And I've learned the hard way early on in my career, where I accepted a $500 payment from somebody on a $1,000 forfeiture. They didn't make another payment after that, and basically had to file another forfeiture. So at the end of the day, it cost me an extra $500.
Yeah, so Ron is asking about the partial payment. Generally the same for CFD versus note?
Yes, my understanding is yes. It's, if you accept that partial payment in any legal. And now here's the other thing, because, Roger asked, are you risk of violating any laws by talking to him and not following certain guidelines required by law, asking as a newbie? So a few things. One is, I follow, fair debt collection, and will read the Miranda. If they call you or reach out to you, typically, it's, you can, have the discussion with them. I mean, typically I'll read it anyways. But, I'm not too concerned, with this borrower, because we do, we stated it, and, we're a debt collector and so forth. The thing to be careful of is, when you're filing a lawsuit against somebody, and then you're turning around and trying to offer them cash for keys or these other deals, you have to be careful that you're not, it can be considered predatory lending if you got your attorney coming from this side for, saying, I'm going to foreclose, and then you're coming from this side.
Yeah.
I'm either going to foreclose or I'll pay you money. It's typically, you gotta be careful. And if they ask, what can I do? Or what can we do to work this out? Then you can say, hey, look, I can give you cash for keys, or I can do this. But you got to be careful trying to force different options on them, because that could technically be considered predatory lending. So another question came through. At what point did you decide to step in and talk to him directly versus to the servicer? This was one that we started talking to this guy right off the bat. Gail is more heroic than I am in talking to borrowers. So she had originally
kind of a people person.
Yeah, so Gail reached out and started talking to this guy, and then when she started talking to him, said, I'm done, Chris, he's all yours. You can start talking to him. Thanks, Gail.
Well, I mean, you start out not knowing whether, like I say, in this case, all these properties we bought were vacant. So I think it was kind of a surprise to find him and to find out he was actually in the house and, ready to start paying again. So that was the main reason. I'm not a huge fan of the outreach services, like any ones that I can think of. So I do sometimes. Well, so we should just explain, since you're asking these kinds of questions, that when we buy assets, we will send our own welcome letter apart from what the servicers send and are mandated to send. we're not required to send our own letter, but we do it as a way of, first of all, so we send a letter that basically says, hey, we're your new lender. We're very interested in helping borrowers who want to stay in their houses do that. Here is the information that we have about your loan. Your last payment was on this date. Your unpaid balance is this. Your next payment is due, here. And it's it's really helpful, because one of the first things that happens is that when a loan is transferring from one servicer to another, there can be payments get made that are made after you buy the note and after, the cutoff date for the previous owner, and now you own it. But depending on the servicer, they don't always automatically send that money to the new servicer. And sometimes they don't even tell you about it too. And I've never known like how far they're willing to go with this game, I'm going to call it. But I had someone who owed, I had a borrower, I sent one of these letters and I said, oh, your last payment was, here. And she's like, oh, no. I paid $4,000 after that. And I'm like, really? Funny, the servicer never brought it up, Chris.
Yeah, sometimes you have to chase down that money. And on the flip side, I'll just mention this. I got a random check in the mail on Monday for $3,000 from a law firm that I never heard of that was on retainer for a bankruptcy case that I had bought the note like 8 months ago. And so I asked my attorney, I'm like, is this okay for me? It's made out to me. And they're like, yep, it was part of the, the deal based on your contract that anything that's in like that comes back to you. And I'm like,
I didn't know you were into manifesting. That's so clever.
Thank you. My 401k, you just got a few more dollars. So another question came through about, with borrowers like this and how to get them comply to follow the city rules. And this one is a struggle. And I actually had a conversation with a woman this morning.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the city rules. What are we talking about?
Code violations.
Oh, how to get them to not violate codes?
Yes. Yeah. And I had this conversation this morning with a woman who, Gail, who I was speaking with, but they have property that the property is only like 2 months or 3 months behind, but there's violations and the property is getting pretty beat up. And, what rights do you have as a lender in regards to trying to get a property maintained? And I believe it's different from a mortgage and a CFD. And from the CFD sense, I think you have more rights because you technically own the property. And I've got 2 properties right now that, actually 3. One of them that I had 54-inch high grass that I was getting quotes of $10,000 to cut. That
54 inches, did you say?
Yeah, the tape measure was the one that had $10,000. They had a tape measure that went up to 54 inches.
Okay, what breed of grass even grows that high? That's what I want to
know. So, things like that, what rights do you have for people not maintaining? And technically, you can default a borrower for not maintaining a property, but you just got to be very careful about how you go about it.
Right. I don't know if Ron Lambert would be interested in coming on and talking about his experience. He had quite a situation with a CFD. Okay, he said yes. He's not Roger, Ron Lambert.
Oh, sorry, wrong one.
Sorry, Roger. As you were. No.
Hold on, I'm screwing this all up.
He's a little dyslexic. It's more of a number guy, really, than letters.
Hey, Ron.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Hey, Ron. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing okay. Good to see you.
Yeah, Ron is kind of the poster child for code violations with borrowers.
Well, it's actually a little more twisted than the way Chris interpreted it, because the borrowers who are in the midst of a divorce have moved out and they have rented the house. And so the code violations that I'm getting flagged with, are really about the tenants' lack of performance as tenants. And of course, the borrowers aren't paying, so why the hell would they help me, right? So it's interesting. I've definitely become very close and friendly with the code enforcement people.
Yeah, tell everybody what they were doing and what the code enforcement people came to you with, and tell us what you did about it.
Yeah, sure. So originally, the first time I heard from them was they have, I don't know if they're running a business in the back, but they have like 8 or 10, decaying vehicles on the property. And at the time, they had a sewage leak on the surface in the backyard. And so the code enforcement people contacted me about that. So I dealt with the sewage situation, which happened to be the tenant's kids shoved a bunch of rocks down the clean out. And so I spent money to have that vacuumed out, and that's okay now.
I thought in the computer age, children didn't have to amuse themselves with such nonsense.
Apparently in Chris's favorite state, they don't have that option. This is in Ohio, so lots of fun. So I took care of the plumbing problem. They had upholstered furniture and all kinds of junk all over the property, that stuff. And
so sitting outside, you had upholstered chairs and
yeah.
Didn't you have a mountain of tires as well?
I think I still do, but yes.
Hey,
and
Ron,
so I'm sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Quick question for you. What county and is the land contract recorded?
It's Alliance. The county, the land contract is recorded. The subsequent, I don't think assignment is the right term, but the subsequent assignments are not, but the quitclaim deeds are.
Okay. So there's a reason why I asked that, but I'll let you go because I'm just curious where the story's going.
Yeah. So like I said, I spent money on plumbing. I did actually contact the tenants, and we've had several conversations, and they sound great on the phone, but they've done very little regarding the code enforcement stuff. And then I got one for grass cutting late June, the one-time warning in the calendar year that the city will give me. The rest of the time, they'll just cut the grass and send me a bill.
Yeah.
I got somebody out there to cut the grass.
Yeah, it'll be a very expensive grass cut.
Yeah, it might be cheaper to go up there and do it myself.
Yeah, exactly.
But fundamentally, we have non-responsive borrowers, one of which is living out of state in the midst of divorce, and no payments coming in, so it's not going very well, honestly.
Yeah, actually, this is one of your first deals, right, Ron? And
it's my first CFD.
Yeah. So Ron and I have a deal together that's actually going extremely well lately. But Ron called me up and he was like, "Oh my gosh, what do I do? I've got the code enforcement people are like all over me." And I said to you, you should call them up and, introduce yourself and make friends with them. And they were very receptive, weren't they? Yeah,
and they continue to be. And I've got the one guy that goes by and takes pictures for me anytime I ask him to.
Yeah, wow.
So I can judge progress. So that's been great. And so far they haven't dinged me with any fines.
Yeah. What I did, Ron, because I had this issue in Ohio and it was in Akron where the borrower was also defaulted. He was living in the property, but same thing. He had, unregistered vehicles in the yard and so forth. So I get the letter from code enforcement. So I picked up the phone and called them and, I said, this is great, but this is a land contract and it's personal property. I can't legally do anything. I'm like,
right.
My hands are completely tied. How can we help each other? And what they ended up doing is I gave them all the information about the land contract when it was recorded and so forth. So what they were going to do is instead of sending me the notices and putting it on me, they were treating it as that individual. And if there was a violation, they were going to actually, put it on that individual, knowing that, he had the obligation under the land contract. And I thought that was like, of all the things in Ohio that always go wrong for me, I'm like, wow, this is actually something that went right. And
yeah, I didn't know that they could just decide arbitrarily. I mean, it seems like in most places, sort of like water bills stay with the property, other utility bills can go with the borrower or tenant. But I mean, do they have the latitude to just decide, okay, you're off the hook?
Because the whole thing with Ohio with land contracts now, and if it was over 5 years old, so it's technically like a note. But what they asked me to do was they said, please provide us proof that you've notified him. And because I told him, I said, look, I'm suing the guy too because the guy's not paying me, and I'm sending him violations that he's in default of the land contract. So it was Franco. Franco had drafted a letter basically with the attachment for the violation and said, you're in violation. You have 30 days to take care of this, or we're going to default you under the land contract. And the guy ended up getting it taken care of and got resolved. So, that's just one avenue, Ron. And the other question I was going to ask is if you offered the divorcees like a cash for keys deal to get the deed back over to you, and then maybe you can evict these tenants if they're that bad.
Yeah, I haven't done that yet. So what I have done is sent to each of them with return postage, the whole 9 yards, cancellation of land contract, saying, here's where we are. If you'd like to just walk away, here's how you can do it.
Yep.
Got no response. That their deadline was this past Monday.
Mm-hmm.
So the next step is either from listening tonight, either move forward with foreclosure by starting with a demand letter, or propose something like cash for keys.
Mm-hmm.
Let me respond to what you said a minute ago. The tenants are the ones that have the vehicles everywhere.
Yeah.
So I guess still, though, in theory, the code enforcement people could make it the borrower's problem because they're the ones on the land.
Yeah, I mean, they're the owners.
Well, actually, step back for a second. You're on deed, right?
Yep.
You don't have a signed lease. I would talk to Franco and say, can I just evict these people?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I hadn't thought about that. I have definitely talked to them in a way that I might not talk to somebody I had a contractual relationship with. Kind of frank with them, but still polite. But yeah, that's a good point. Maybe I can just evict them.
Yeah, I would try and just evict them. Say they're living in there. There's no signed lease. I want them out. And because deeds in your name. And granted, the land contract's recorded, but it's something I would definitely at least pick up the phone and have that conversation. Now, how old is the land contract?
Older than I wish. I knew it when I bought it. And I actually called Gail and I said, I'm going to learn from this. Right?
That's where it all happens, right?
So here's what I would do, because the foreclosure is going to cost you, some serious money.
Yep.
Now, I would almost, is it both the husband and wife on the land contract?
That's correct.
So I would almost, try and pin them against each other and say, hey, look, I've got $2,000. The first one to sign gets $1,500. The other one gets $500. So,
that's funny.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah, actually, if you can evict the people, then they don't have any money coming in from it anymore.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
It's just albatross around their neck.
That's right, because the tenants claim they're paying the borrower. I'm not sure I believe anybody anymore, but
yeah. So if you can choke off their income from it,
yeah,
plus get yourself out of trouble with code enforcement by getting rid of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good.
Win-win.
I appreciate the ideas. That's awesome.
The other thing too is, offer code enforcement to walk through the property. Maybe they could condemn it for you and not let inhabitants in there, and then you could take care of the yard. And again, that would be another way to have them cut it off.
Maybe you have to replug up that sewer pipe. That would help. Uninhabitable.
No, that's a very educational one. I've got simple. So I've got one right now that.
Okay, it's a doozy, particularly for a first one, Ron. Someone decided you should have a big experience on your.
That's right. That's okay. It's all good.
So one thing I'll mention is on cash for keys deals. I've got one right now that just wrapped up where I was giving $1,000 cash for keys if the borrowers, basically empty the residence by this date, broom swept, the whole 9 yards. That was like item number 2 in the cancellation in cash for keys deal. Item number 3 is basically, hey, look, if you leave anything, it's not considered personal property. It's considered abandoned, so I can do whatever I want with it.
Right.
So the borrower took that as, well, we'll leave whatever we want and you can have it.
But we don't feel like removing.
But we'll still give you. We still want the $1,000. They still thought they'd get the $1,000.
Yeah, the cash for keys.
Yeah, and this is a 3-story, 2,000 square foot house that, on the 3rd floor has 2 mattresses, a sectional sofa, a rocking chair, a bureau, a hutch, and multiple other things in it.
Yeah, they thought you were incredibly generous to offer them money to leave it all behind.
Yeah, so my attorney basically resolved it and was like, no, you're not getting the money. And they didn't put up a fight because I think they realized it. And it was unfortunate, honestly, because there was a husband and wife and they're getting separated. And the wife seemed to be very generous and nice, and she was the one that moved out and the husband was the one that was supposed to clean it out. And basically it's like he did it out of spite because she was the one only getting the money, not him. And so he's basically like, hey, look, I'm getting nothing out of this. Why am I going to spend money to get rid of this stuff? And it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, plus he could mess her up, which depending on the tenor of the relationship could be very gratifying.
Yeah, it was basically one last dig, I think.
Yeah. Man.
Yeah.
We did a big sigh at the same time.
So Ron, if you could, start all over on this one, what would be, some of the things that you would, go back and do, except not invest in Ohio, but besides.
Yeah, that's kind of the easy one. I don't know. I don't know if there's any way to verify that the borrowers are actually the people that are in the property. That's kind of been a bit of a pickle. I mean, in all honesty, I read the servicing notes, and back in November-ish, they were talking about potentially going through divorce and that kind of stuff. So I kind of knew a certain amount of this was, very likely to happen.
So the other thing I'd mentioned to Franco, or whoever it is, I just say Franco because that's who I use, your attorney. So 2 things. One is if you can evict them, and then the second is if you foreclose. Because it's not owner occupied, Ohio does have some quirky laws in regards to non-owner occupied property as well as vacant property. So if you can get them booted and then have it be vacant and then foreclose on a vacant property, I think there's a fast track in Ohio. So just some food for thought there on kind of talking that out with your attorney to kind of see what's the best way to go down that whole path.
Right. So a full foreclosure in Ohio is what, $5,000 to $6,000?
Yeah.
I'm talking to you, Christopher. Yeah. Okay. So, if they're really, not budging, I would offer them a fairly generous cash for keys offer. I mean, it's still worth it. Even if you have to give them $3,000, it's still, you're still going to be better off and it'll be quicker.
Yeah.
So I once gave a borrower who had already had her land contract canceled $3,000 just to move out so that I didn't have to evict her. Just because it was a situation where she's a mom, she was moving from a very unsafe building. So I had I didn't feel like I was taking away like a decent home from someone, but my attorney definitely felt like he did not want her to go into court and be, a tearful single mother, losing her home. So, sometimes it's just like it kind of rubs you the wrong way. Like, I'm in the right. Why do I have to, give people money? But, in the end, it actually made me feel better too, because she was very happy and she actually scrubbed this very distressed house for me because she wanted it to be nice for me because she was grateful.
So we've got a few questions about Ohio. First one was why does it get a bad rap, and is it just a high foreclosure cost? So
James.
So two things. One is, yes, it has high taxes, high foreclosure costs, and in a lot of locations, the inspectional services for code violations basically will ding you for anything and everything possible. Now, the other thing with Ohio that I'll mention is on land contracts, they're in the process of changing the laws, which are basically going to eliminate land contracts. And that's going to make it even more difficult for notes, because if you're buying properties that are under 50 grand, it's not even going to be worth buying a note in Ohio, because in most places, because you're going to spend $6,000 to foreclose. It's going to take you a year. You're going to have to pay another $2,000 in taxes. So, I mean, you're going to be in this thing easy for $10,000, $12,000 just right off the bat before. So if it's worth 50, you're paying maybe 10 cents, 20% of that. You might pay 10 grand. I wouldn't pay probably more than 10 or 15,000 for a $50,000 asset in Ohio, just because of everything you're going to have to go through.
Right. So Roger's saying last November, Scott Carson was still saying Ohio was an awesome place to buy notes, except for Cleveland. I was just going to mention Cleveland. I don't know if it's any. So that's Cuyahoga County.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is true in other counties as well, but if you get a house back and you want to renovate it to resell it, or even just resell it on a new loan of some kind, you have to pay the city an enormous bond, actually equal to the renovation costs, right?
It's called a point of sale inspection, that you can't sell basically a shitty house. And
yeah, you can't do a minimal, make it, decent, and, you have to spend some serious money. In a lot of places, you can do a minimal rehab just to make it sort of a place that people can move into and work on at their leisure, but not there. So,
yeah, and some people do enjoy Ohio. I think Chad Erbschot likes to buy a lot in Ohio.
He's not on tonight, right? But
no, Chad's not on. I mean, it's personal preference, and I also say,
I just want to say, you and I agreed not 3 hours ago that we thought Chad was the smartest person we knew in this business. So
yes, but he invests in Ohio,
right? You neglected
I said
that.
Smartest besides me, and I invest in Maryland and Maine. Maine has the longest foreclosure in the country.
Yeah, that's crazy. I have to chalk it up to your ridiculous ambition to own a note in every state, which that's just crazy.
We just got New York, Gail.
Yeah, I know. Perhaps this is a good time to talk about that.
Yes, it's yes. So actually, Ron, I'm just going to
thank you, Ron.
Moment. Okay.
Good luck. Come back and talk to us about it some more when there are new developments.
Will do.
Okay. Take care. Okay, super exciting news, particularly if there are any among you who would love to be note investors but just have not had the ability or the courage to pull the trigger yet. Christopher and I just did something we would always advise other people not to do. We bought a really ugly set of notes, 15 of them, is it?
Well, step back. We really bought 3.
Yeah, we bought 3.
That have 12 that were included that, if you can think of ugly, these are on another world.
These are zombie notes. Like, we don't know if they're going to reanimate or not, or if they're just dead. We have no idea. But we thought, we've already been down this road of starting with you don't know what you have and then finding out what you have. We're looking for some volunteer interns who would love to have a note working out experience with some really difficult notes. Now, some of you saw the picture of me and my dog summiting Mount Everest, so I'm very goal-oriented and I'm not afraid of a big challenge. So we are looking for people who, this is going to be a very safe experience because you're not going to have to put any money in, and you have nothing at risk. You have nothing to lose except some of your time. And, we would like to have you look at these notes, do some research, find out if anything can be made of some of them, and we will be here to guide and teach you along the way. So I think it's actually this is something that I would have jumped at like 5 years ago, but I don't know if.
Yeah. So just be clear, Gail and I have these assets, and for example, we have the collateral file, and what we would have you do is look at the collateral file. Some of them may have, very high taxes, and like look into the taxes, look into code violations, do a little research to see if it's past the statute of limitations, or, it's things like that, it would be a good learning experience for people. We're not asking you to spend any money. We're not, we own these things, and we're just doing, honestly, we thought, we were like, okay, we're going to split up things and do something. And it came up with the idea, hey, let's see if anyone's interested in this, to kind of just get some education and look at stuff that, the reality of it is, there's probably a good portion of these that there's nothing that can be done, but I think it would be very good and educational for people to realize what to look for on things that are very extremely toxic in that sense.
Yeah. So and it's also just a lot of, practice problem solving, because this business it's nothing but problem solving. And, the fact is, Chris, even if, some of them have really high taxes or whatever, if there's any merit, like I just famously sold a house on Facebook in Birmingham I offered it for $500, but in a bidding frenzy, the price was bid up to $750. So, that was a house I was literally told needed to be torn down. And unfortunately, I had foreclosed on it. Like, I didn't realize before I spent all the money that all you could do was tear it down. And Chris and I were discussing different ways to make it go away. So, I was thinking I'm going to have to spend more money tearing it down. Chris was like, why don't you see if the fire department will burn it down for you? And we had several other, creative ideas. In the end, I thought, what the heck? It's going to be worth something to somebody who's willing to put the time into it. And that stupid house, I put it up on Facebook Marketplace with the headline. It said, this house completely sucks, so I am selling it for less than the cost of a new iPhone. And I got 100 at least responses. The funniest ones we published on in the show notes for that particular podcast where I talked about it. If you haven't seen those, it's good reading.
So the other thing I'll mention when we talk about time, it's probably a few hours, Gail. 2-3 hours worth.
Yeah.
We're not talking like weeks on end. This is literally probably anywhere from 1 to 4 hours of time. It's not, we're not asking people to, spend, the next 3 weeks, full time looking at this stuff. And again, it's trying to educate everybody on some things to look for, and, look at different possible exit strategies on things that could possibly, for example, high taxes. Another thing that pops in my head is talking to the county and being like, can there be a payment plan? Because if I can get the property and, just
that's what I was going to say. Sometimes you could sell these, like, it's not worth it to us, but somebody could buy it because once they're the owner, they can get a payment plan on taxes and they can whittle it down, So
pay it over 5 years, which, maybe they have to pay an extra, if it's $10,000, maybe they pay an extra $150, $200.
Right. So this is a little like a personalized course on more creative exit strategies than you would normally be employing in deals that you're doing where you're trying to do, velocity of money, faster turnarounds. Like, we're just, we're looking to figure out how to exit all of these, get maybe something for some, maybe nothing for others.
So if you're interested, feel free to email us, either Gail at...
We already have people. This is so exciting. James, Zoe. Roger. Great.
Okay. Yep.
We'll
Good.
talk. We'll talk after. You'll see this posted also on Notes and Bolts Facebook group, because obviously not everybody we know is on tonight, and we would love to get rocking and rolling with this. Or even Ron, you haven't taken enough abuse yet, Ron. Okay, you're on the list.
I mean,
sometimes we should create a Slack group where everybody could talk actually about what's going on with you use Slack, right? Everyone could talk about what's happening with their, they could trade ideas. So it will be fun.
Yeah, maybe something we can, look into that as well. Yeah, that's
and we'll have reunions in the future of the team. It's like the Manhattan Project.
Well, and the other thing I'll mention, like some of them may have lost notes. So, what's the benefit? Is a lost note affidavit something that can be coverable? And
collateral issues. I'm sure you'll see it all.
There's going to be a lot of collateral issues. You'll see. And again, these are, things that, the seller essentially kind of tossed in. So to try and close out their funds. So
he dared us to make something of these.
That's kind of what they did.
And we're going to throw it back in his face.
So we're trying to figure out, okay, how can we try and make a few bucks on these if we can, and maybe we can't. But the flip side is, we're not going to also go out and hire attorneys to do all this stuff and spend $3,000 to realize we're
not going to do that. So I should say, we bought another pool of six pretty crappy ones that the seller thought I'm not going to bother with these. They're vacant. We can't find the owners. We can't find the borrowers. We don't even in one case, the borrowers were a young, 20-somethings couple that had split up very acrimoniously and gone their separate ways. And, they too dared us to make something of it. And we just knocked it out of the park. We hunted those people down. We called their neighbors to find where they were.
And cool. The other benefit is, and I'm just trying to open this right now to see, these are in, let's see, Alabama, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Illinois, Kentucky, which New York, Missouri, Wisconsin. So those are the states. So some of these states like New York, not an easy state to deal with. Wisconsin, Wisconsin, Kentucky, Illinois, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, in some cases we'll just be gathering enough intelligence to be able to sell these for something to someone who's got a license in Kentucky, which we don't.
Which actually I think they're sold at tax sale, but maybe we can redeem them, maybe we can't, and
we can get if there's surplus funds, maybe we can get those.
Yep. So lots of different things to just think of, and this will be learning for you, because these are the types of questions that Gail and I will be asking you. Like, okay, did you look into this or look into that? And it will just spur things, because I'll be honest, there's no training really that is out there that can teach you stuff like this. You can learn a lot of the bare bones basics on things, but when you get caught in these pickles or in these situations, you kind of got to think outside the box. But if you've never been down that rabbit hole, you might not, know what the limits of the box is. So
exactly. You don't know you don't even know there's a box. So it will be cool.
So
good time will be had by all.
Yes. And like we said, it's, we're not asking you to pay any money into anything or any type of training. We're also not going to be paying you. I don't believe.
Just take yes for an answer. We have yes. I just want to say, this is the kind of thing this is where the real learning takes place, because these are so difficult, and it's really going to call. I guarantee you won't be afraid of normal notes after this. It'll seem like all I have to do is foreclose, no biggie.
Yeah, I remember sending these to Gail, and she looks at the first four and she goes, "What the hell?"
Yes. What in the world? Oh well.
But good. Any other questions from people as we get to wrap up this episode of the podcast?
Okay, Sylvia got on late. Were you on last week, and has John from put out any more tapes? Now, in fact, John went on vacation till next Tuesday,
Yes.
did you say? So don't expect anything.
Yeah,
And
I
not
wouldn't
sit by
expect
your
anything.
computer.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect anything probably till, early next month, I guess. So he hasn't put anything since that last tape. And no, we were not on last week. I had lost power. So, and just FYI, next Wednesday, that's what I wanted to make announce. Next Wednesday, we're going to have Debbie Mullins back on. Debbie does bookkeeping for a lot of note investors. And we're going to walk through basically how to do your books from essentially go ahead, Gail.
I just want to say, you said next Wednesday. You're making it sound like it's always Wednesday from now on.
No.
We're only Wednesday tonight and next week. And
Yes.
the exciting reason is tomorrow is Chris's birthday. So
Yes.
I know a lot of you were already making plans for some kind of celebration. It will be a go-to-work optional day because of the national holiday of Chris's birthday.
Exactly.
So now I have to actually ask you something. So you always talk about how we're opposites. You have a summer birthday. I have a winter birthday. My birthday is 3 days after Christmas. Mm-hmm. So for my whole early life, I never had to go to school on my birthday. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure I've even ever gone to work on my birthday. Like, do regular people take their birthdays off from work?
I don't, but
yeah. No surprise.
Some people don't. Some companies actually give their employees their birthdays off. But no. So the reason why this Thursday, tomorrow's mine, my son's is next Thursday. So we just, then we can go back to Thursdays.
Then we're back to Thursdays.
Yes, because my wife's is the following Wednesday. So
okay,
we're having that Wednesday.
So no Wednesday. I don't know if you all saw it. Chris put up a Notes and Bolts Facebook group post, basically saying, would it be helpful to have a bookkeeper really explain how to categorize everything that you're entering in your bookkeeping? And people kind of went crazy. So now we're making it happen. Next Wednesday, Deb Mullins, Bookkeeper to the Stars, is going to lead us through that. I mean, I've been very religiously keeping my books. I don't even know if, they are categorized correctly. Luckily, it's not difficult to just switch, categories, high-level categories. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I expect to have some big aha moments next Wednesday.
Yeah, so I was, intrigued because I've got a little bit of an accounting background as well. And when, we basically set everything up, the big things of setting up, basically the note is completely separate. It's really like two separate things. You've got your note and then you've got kind of your JV partner, and they run almost complete. They're separate. It's, the money comes in from the, what was interesting to me was when money was coming in from the borrower, the principal was going as an asset and the interest was a liability. And I was trying to figure out, okay, that doesn't make sense to me and why, but then she explained it all and it's like, okay, now it makes sense. And when you understand that, it's much easier to understand your books. And actually, like when you go to do quarterly payments or however you pay your JV, like, I can run a balance sheet report for each asset, and whatever the delta from the assets to liabilities is basically, what I need to pay that JV partner, which is balance. And it's like, boom, gets everything done so quickly. But I know a lot of people might be thinking, I have no clue what you're talking about, but she is literally going to walk you through every single step of starting out with somebody gives you $10,000 to buy a note. You buy the note. The person
next.
Yeah, you have a servicing fee or you pay an attorney fee. Mm-hmm. How do you do all that? So hopefully that will be very helpful for people.
A true Notes and Bolts experience next Wednesday. Cool. Okay.
Good.
Yes, we will definitely record it. We always do.
Yep. So.
Future civilizations will be able to watch this and be like, what are those people talking about?
So
money? What's that? We trade M&Ms now.
So, and the other thing I'll mention, if there are other topics people want, let us know. We are in talks with Tony Tony Satil, or Satili, however it's pronounced,
Mm-hmm.
about
Yeah.
talking about bankruptcy and coming on. I had an interesting post on Bigger Pockets that I posted about bankruptcy and how I love them. And everyone is basically telling me that I'm crazy for liking bankruptcies because, I have a completely different strategy than other people do in regards to bankruptcy. And, I think that would be a very helpful topic to talk about.
Yeah, I don't know anything about Chapter 7 versus 13. I've had several 13s, but 7, I'm kind of clueless.
I've had 1-7.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it was unfortunate because the guy in Chapter 7 didn't want the house, so he let it go, but you still have to foreclose on it. I literally had a neighbor with a check in the guy's name for $1,000 and said, he will give you this if you sign here. And the guy refused because he's like, I don't have anything to do with the house. And I'm like, no, you still technically do because you still own the house. But yeah, so.
Alrighty. Any new business? Any old business?
Yeah. Any last second
comments, concerns? I'm looking at. Okay, watch for those of you who raised your hands about interning. We will, like I say, you'll see an announcement on Nuts and Bolts. We'll get a couple more people to spread the pain around. And we'll put a Slack group together and we'll be in touch about it. Thank you for volunteering. I'm excited.
Yes. So if that is all, well, thank you everyone for joining us for this episode of the Good Deeds No Investing podcast. Make sure if you haven't registered to register to sign up for the webinars at gooddeedsnotinvesting.com, as well as sign up for any tapes that we have coming out. And please, if you could, leave us a review at iTunes or Stitcher. And as always, go out and do some good deeds.